We are live. Do we have who is on? Dave Pelletier. We're talking about rail this morning, and we're going to rail and freight plan update. So, get a little conversation going about our freight lines, and we're real interested in that always. So, go right ahead, Dave. Take it away. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me. For the record, my name is Dave Pelletier. I work in the policy and planning section at VTrans. And I, of course, have a little presentation to guide us through some discussion here. And I'm going to share that right now. I can't see you all right now, but can someone confirm that they can see my presentation?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet. No.
Try one more time here. Screen, that, share.
There we go.
There we go.
We're on. There we go.
Let me start from the beginning. And there we have it, and I can see you all now, which is very helpful. Thank you. All right, so for presentation here, the Agency of Transportation has been working on an update of, or updates of two very important plans, transportation modal plans for the state rail plan and the state freight plan. And we are doing these in tandem because of the significant overlap the two plans have in the area of freight rail. So we've been able to have some efficiencies both in process and also in consultant assistance in doing this in this manner. And the two plans are on roughly the same time cycle as well. So it's been a benefit to approach things this way. You'll see in the presentation, the rail plan is very close to completion. The freight plan is a little farther behind. The rail plan was due for expiration sooner. So we kind of front-loaded the process starting last summer to focus on the rail plan first, and then we're about to pivot over to developing the the multimodal freight plan. Both of these plans support the vision of the statewide long-range transportation plan, which deals with all modes, passenger, freight, et cetera. It's kind of the 30,000-foot transportation plan for the state. And you'll see the vision on the left side of your screen there for the transportation system in Vermont. So the goals and initiatives that we develop through the freight and rail plan are intended to serve this vision for the state's transportation system. A little bit of background on why are we doing this? Well, good planning makes for a good transportation system, efficient passenger and freight transport. It allows us to make the best use of each of the modes, hopefully to save wear on the highway system if we can get freight into rail cars as much as possible. It also helps us meet other goals that the state has, including, for example, those of the state comprehensive energy plan in terms of transportation sectors energy. And clean air goals, et cetera. So the transportation system touches on quite a few other related goals of the state as well. And
that's a good comparison there with the cargo carrying.
This was something that we at one of the I should mention. Well, I'll mention it. I'll go into a little more detail in one of the upcoming slides.
Right. Yeah.
We've had significant outreach for the rail plan, including visiting the regional planning commissions and their transportation advisory committees. We've had a couple town halls over the past half year or so, online, of course. But we get questions occasionally in those settings. And at one of our meetings, someone asked, "Well, how much corn can you put in a rail freight car? What's the comparison of a truck to a rail car?" And so we developed this with our consultant team to be a quick and easy way to understand kind of the relative efficiencies for appropriate commodities in a truck versus a rail car. So I'm glad you enjoyed that. We've got a lot of mileage.
That's a good simple way to put it, and you can I can understand it.
yeah, excellent. just a couple more notes on the background and why we're doing this. The Federal Rail Administration it requires that we have a state rail plan updated every 4 years to remain eligible for specific grant programs. And those programs are ones that the state of Vermont has benefited from greatly for upgrades along its rail corridors. My supervisor, who I think is in the meeting right now, Costa Pappas, has been integral in making applications to those programs over the years. We've gotten quite a few dollars in the state to upgrade bridges and rail lines to support our system. And then with regard to the freight plan, the Federal Highway Administration oversees that, requires that every 5 years. There's also a money access component attached to that, and we do get freight formula funds from the Federal Highway Administration, and we have to show them basically what our plan is in terms of how we're going to use that pot of money. It's not an inconsequential amount of money. I think it's somewhere in the range of $30 million. So we need to show them through this freight plan that we've done our homework and we've got a good idea about where to spend it and what to spend it on. All right, let's talk a little bit about the rail plan in more detail. It covers freight rail and it covers intercity passenger rail. It does not get into the realm of commuter rail. That is under the purview of the Federal Transit Administration. We get into that a little bit in our public transit policy plan that the agency also supports. But this is limited to really the intercity long haul passenger rail services. So you'll see the focus on that in the presentation. Just a quick reminder or a glimpse at the rail system and a couple stats about it. We've got 578 active rail miles in the state. 305 of those are owned by the state. And the Amtrak service covers about 200 miles of the operating rail lines in the state.
And we hope to make that more when we get Burlington.
That's right. Yeah, and I'll show you that, and that'll come up in an upcoming slide here as well.
Yeah.
So just in terms of the rail plan, it's a somewhat traditional planning process. I mean, we take a look at what we've got out there for existing conditions. We think about our vision and goals for the system. We take a look at what the trends have been in recent years in terms of, for passenger rail, what the ridership trends have been, where the ridership is coming and going to. Commodity flows for the freight aspects, take a look at what our expectations are for demographic and socioeconomic trends. You all were talking about housing earlier, and the relationship to population growth, hopefully at some point, and then the economy and whatnot affects how we make our investments in these systems. In terms of the ideas, the initiatives that we want to implement to support the rail system, we carried forward quite a few from the 2015 rail plan that were still relevant. This plan update, I should say, the rail plan is a little bit more of a freshen up of the existing plan. We still had a lot of really good objectives and strategies to implement in the 2015 plan. So we carried forward quite a few of those. Check the box on a few of the things that we've got kind of in the bag at this point, like the aforementioned extension to Burlington, and then develop some new initiatives, or based on our analysis of the conditions and the goals, from stakeholder outreach to the railroads that we conducted, and then some of those online town halls that we held. And then over on the right of your screen, get that out of the way. Actually, let me minimize this. That's probably been in your way the whole time. I apologize. We went through a process of kind of an evaluation of each of these potential initiatives to figure out what kind of rises to the top and what are the ones that we want to put in the parking lot and keep in the plan, but maybe not pursue as quickly or with as much vigor. So. And these initiatives for the rail plan they can certainly be capital related projects, improvements to the system, but we're also looking for to take advantage of improved coordination and communications with the rail companies, and also economic development opportunities. Looking for opportunities to preserve and develop rail sidings throughout the state for appropriate rail uses, and that sort of thing. So they run the gamut. these are the major goal areas for the rail plan. Again, they're not significantly different from the 2015 plan. We made a couple of minor tweaks to them. One thing that we did add in here was this concept of resiliency. You'll see at the bottom. Our agency has done a significant amount of work in the past few years on developing resiliency planning tools for the highway network to identify where we have repeated washouts or impacts to the highway system, where if we make a wise investment up front, we'll be able to avoid those kind of repeat damage situations that we've experienced in major storm events, for instance. We're taking a look at that in the rail plan as well now to make sure that we are as well prepared and make investments to avoid those types of situations where we have breaks in service because of those types of incidents. I just want to point out too, on the right side of the screen, this is of course aligned with all of the other efforts that we make to planning and policy within the agency. Certainly with our state budgeting processes, with the transportation improvement program and the capital budget. I mentioned the long range transportation plan is where we take the vision for this system from, and then the project selection and prioritization process that the agency is continuing to develop to have a kind of quantitative, rational way to sort through all of the projects and ideas for projects, that we are making sure we're making the right investments at the right time on the right systems. So lots of interagency or intra-agency coordination on all of this planning and implementation. A couple slides on getting into a little bit of the nitty-gritty on the rail system here. This, as you can see from this map, Vermont is pretty much the center of the rail world. Well, not really, but we've gotten some mileage out of this map and showing that we kind of are the center of this distribution here. We are linked worldwide by our short line and then connections to Class 1 railroads. So this is significant. You can see our trade partners are significant domestic trade partners there, shown by tons of volume in rail. Our New York State and Maine. Canada is a big partner as well, as you can see by the numbers. And the other thing I would mention is there's a note at the bottom here that says map only shows inbound and outbound rail. That's only about half of the rail that operates through Vermont. Another half passes right through. And while that might sound somewhat concerning in terms of, well, who's benefiting from our rail system and what do we get from it? I guess what I would remind us of is that this position in the overall regional and national rail network positions us quite well for grant application opportunities, because we are a significant link in the overall system. We've seen that borne out by our grant application.
Dave,
yeah.
If you would go back to your prior slide.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No, that's fine.
If you could crosswalk, all right, so the goals.
Yeah.
And for example, we've had a lot of conversation about getting our bridges up to the higher weight level to
Yes.
it. So my question is, can you crosswalk what you have in your plan
Yes.
for this coming fiscal year with the goals that you have on this chart, on this slide?
In terms of actual capital budget programming?
Yeah.
I am not familiar enough with the budget itself. That's probably something that Dan Delabriere would have to speak in detail
all right.
to.
Okay. All right.
In a general sense that there is a connection.
Francis, you got a question?
I can respond to it, Senator, if it pleases the committee. So for the record, Costa Pappas, Policy and Planning Manager at the Agency of Transportation. So Senator Kitchell, the answer to your question is yes. We have in our budget the Western Quarter bridge upgrades from Rutland down to Hoosick. Those were derived from a federal grant we received a couple of years ago. When we got that grant, we started doing all the planning and the design work, and they are filtering into our budget request. Bridges are very important for us. The Western Corridor, there's been a lot of work done on them. And with this grant, we will complete 286 along the entire Western Corridor. The New England Central Railroad is already 286 through previous grants that were awarded under the Passenger Rail Initiative. And we will continue to focus on 286 upgrades on the state system. So the Western Corridor is underway. We envision moving on to the Connecticut River line next. So Newport to White River Junction, that's another critical corridor where the bridges need upgrading. So you will continue to see on an annual basis, as long as we're successful with some federal grant funds, continuous proposals to keep upgrading those bridges on the entire state network.
Costas, when we go from Burlington to New York City with Amtrak, will all the bridges along that corridor be 286 or no? There's still many to do.
Well, they're all going to be 286 on our corridor, the Western Corridor. The train now goes into New York and uses different railroads, the Canadian Pacific. Those, for the most part, are 286. I think the entire network may be 286,
Okay.
but the freight movement is actually heading south of there. It's not following the passenger rail route.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
It had Rutland to Manchester, Bennington on to Hoosick. But yeah, the entire corridor that we own as a state will be 286 when we complete this project with the federal funds we received a couple of years ago.
Wow, that's good news. Good. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, go right ahead.
We spoke about this. Just a little map to assist what we were just talking about there. You can see the Amtrak routes. It's a mention of ridership, combined ridership from the Ethan Allen Express and the Vermonter in 2019 was just over 95,000. About 80% of that is on the Vermonter. And of course, we are still awaiting the restart of service at this point. And I'll get into a little bit of the where the future may lie for services, of how the rail plan models them. We did, as one of the requirements of this plan, we did model various passenger rail initiatives, and as background factors to those analyses, we looked at some of the economic and demographic trends that we are facing and may face in the future in the state. We looked at committed projects. Those are the ones like, for instance, the Ethan Allen Express extension. We know we are committed to and are going to make happen. So we're looking at changes in ridership based on that. And then we did, in the analysis, consider a few different factors that will undoubtedly affect things, but we don't know exactly how they're going to play out and how quickly we return to rail service, how quickly the ridership returns to pre-COVID ridership levels, et cetera, have been things on the table that we've been considering. This is a lot of information, but I just want to at least cover for you examples of the scenarios, the passenger rail scenarios that we considered in the modeling, and then perhaps you can take a look at the projected ridership, 2040 ridership at your leisure. But we looked at, on the Vermonter corridor, we looked at the extension to Montreal, of course, which is you'll see shortly.
I'll tell you, we want that badly. We're still
Yeah.
working on it. We're working.
Yeah.
We're doing a good job,
That's-
but Montreal demands a lot. Yeah.
That's still one of the top recommendations of this plan.
They got a big wish list. I know that.
Yep. Yep. After that, we modeled what it would look like to have twice daily service terminating in Montreal, and that's something that shows great potential in the future. And then on the Vermonter corridor, we looked at a couple other ideas, including working with Massachusetts to make a connection to Boston and Springfield. We looked at how that might serve Vermont's interests. We also looked at extension of Valley Flyer train to White River Junction up that eastern corridor out of Massachusetts. On the Ethan Allen Express line, we looked at what the results would be, including an additional route through that southern corridor that we were just discussing in terms of freight, which of course would require significant upgrades in terms of infrastructure, but nonetheless, we modeled it just for for the purpose of seeing what it might bring in the future. And then we also looked at faster service and how that increases utility of the services and the ridership along each of these corridors. So again, a lot of information in here, but I just wanted to make you aware that as part of this process, we do take a look at what the possibilities are in terms of future passenger rail service to make our investment decisions based on some data. All right, so getting from goals to initiatives. And when I say initiatives, I mean essentially projects. We're using the name or the word terminology initiatives to just to signify that it's not all capital projects. I think when we talk about projects, people are very much bricks and mortar oriented in their thinking. And some of these initiatives are, as I mentioned earlier, their relationships, their coordination, their communication, their development of adjacent land, et cetera. So what we did was we used a sort of analytical format that mirrors the state's developing VPSP2, that project prioritization and selection process we've been working on, and came out with an initial list or ranking of all these initiatives that were developed through the planning process, and then took a look at them with the Vermont Rail Advisory Council, who's been serving as the advisory committee for this process, and looked at it all with our consultants and considered the feasibility of all these various initiatives. And to get to the kind of where the rubber meets the road here, where the rail wheel meets the rail line, the first priority recommendations really are consistent with what we've got in the 2015 plan, and also consistent with some of the exchanges we just had about, for instance, extending the Vermont to Montreal, starting as a 1 trip per day service, potential for 2 in the future. We of course need to figure out, track, and respond kind of our post-COVID rail world, and think about what we need to make for changes to respond to that, how quickly things recover, and adjust our approach based on that. We've also got the upgrade of all the freight lines to 286 pan capacity that we were talking about earlier, to maximize our use of the system. And also passenger rail station improvements. We've got various ones that are kind of in the works right now, including a significant upgrade coming in Rattleboro over the next couple of years. Other improvements along the western corridor that we've been making in anticipation of that Ethan Allen Express extension to Burlington, and other smaller scale improvements along the passenger rail lines as well. We've also got this fifth one off to the right here, related to safety improvements and kind of the ongoing implementation of crossing safety improvements that we use for a couple different funding streams, including the Section 130 crossing program that we implement. So these are kind of the absolute cream of the crop, kind of rose to the top initiatives that we'll be working on in the next short term.
Very exciting. It's very exciting. It's we got a lot of promises here for rail in Vermont, and it's very exciting to see if we can pull it off. It's going to make a big difference, and rail come back. I'm hoping passenger rail gets we can settle with Amtrak by have some ridership by July, I hope, and open that up, because I think that's important. People will start using it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I have two slides here that are painfully just text, but just the quickest way to give you a sense of the range of the other recommendations in the plan. Of course, we're going to continue to seek grants and funding approaches for all of these improvements to be able to implement our great ideas. You can see some of the specifics there, bridge and track upgrades that we were just talking about, maintaining our connections to Class 1 railroads outside of the state to make sure that we have a freight network that is of use and utility to both companies within Vermont and outside of Vermont wanting to trade with Vermont. Improving multimodal connections to our Amtrak stations, including transit bicycle ped connections. making other efforts to improve rail yards and other infrastructure. There's one other slide here. One other thing that we've put back on the table here is to really make a concerted effort to preserve and fully use our rail sidings and get assistance from the regional planning commissions to do an updated inventory of where we have maybe underutilized industrial parcels or rail sidings to work with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development and the railroads to find uses for those and increase our use of the freight network. What else here stands out? I mentioned freight rail yard improvements. And then of course, I mentioned just increasing the resilience of the rail system to make sure that we are prepared for what appears to be increasing and regular storm severity in weather events that we've experienced in recent years.
Jane, we can get Sears on in Bennington and drop them off in Burlington, you know, give them a little ride. Yeah.
It would be scenic.
Yeah, scenic group. We
Oh, what-
want
we could give
this committee to go on a when the weather's nice to go from Burlington to maybe Rutland and back, just to give them a feel of it. It's always been an exciting time to do it. So we'll try to squeeze that in with Vermont Rail before we adjourn.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
I
there's
did
nothing.
take
Yeah. Go ahead, Jane.
years ago, there legislators and I took the train, and you've taken a portion of it, but I took the train from St. Johnsbury to White River.
Yeah.
We got on at 8 a.m, and by noon, I wasn't even out of my Senate district.
Well, we were stopping along the way, checking the
No,
grain
no,
yard.
you weren't on that.
No, I
It
wasn't
was
on
so-
that one. No.
No, it was so long ago. Bud Otterman was there
Oh.
with me.
We were all
And-
hoping we stop at your house and get lunch, but you never made it happen. So
No, we were on the one that went to Wells River and ended there. So but the condition of the track was such that we had to go rather slow. And I know we've been making improvements on the line, but it was a long trip. So the Western Corridor, I think, is going to be all welded rail, and the bed has been improved. So I think maybe that trip would be a little faster.
Yes. So that pretty much concludes my information on the rail plan. We have a draft plan at this point. We will present it to the Rail Advisory Council next week, and with their recommendation and endorsement, we hopefully will be able to submit the plan to the Federal Rail Administration very soon. The existing plan lapses on May 11th. We think we've got plenty of time to make sure we've got an updated, adopted plan. But that's kind of the where the rail plan stands in the next steps and the major pieces of content within it.
one of the things I just want to bring up for the committee, I've always been impressed, and I've visited a couple of sites in St. Albans. We have the rail dispatching center for the whole country.
Oh, right.
And it's so amazing to sit there and watch trains being dispatched from St. Albans, Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
And they tell trains what to move in Arkansas or wherever they're in the country, and they tell when trains to move, what's not. It is so amazing. It's something that people don't know we have here in Vermont.
Yep.
For that service to be provided out of St. Albans for the whole country. And sometimes you want to take a chance to visit that site. It's very impressive, I thought, because to see how they move trains like that, it's just amazing.
Yes. I have just a handful of slides here.
Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, just to give you a sense of the freight plan, what's in it, and where we are with that process. As you can see from this montage I put together here, it covers everything. We've got our airports included. The rail work that we've already done will be part of this plan as well. It certainly covers highway transport and truck transport. We also get into, you see the Barton transload facility that was a project in relatively recent years, and we get into infrastructure and connections like that as part of this plan as well.
What's Sulker? What was that? What's that? A grain or?
It's great, and perhaps Senator
Mhm.
Kitchell could
Yeah, I actually know
speak
about it.
about this,
We
but my
went by
understanding,
that. We went by that, didn't we, in our train ride, Jane? Or
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
Senator Ingalls.
Yeah, that's they're bringing in malt for microbrews and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, we
And,
went by that on the train ride. I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
exactly. Yes, thank you.
Wow.
And they're
If
actually
you-
building another line right there into that facility, maybe for storage of cars or whatever, but they're actively doing that right now.
Excellent.
So-
Great.
Yep.
There's a lot of beer being consumed.
Yes.
We need to support that, right?
Yes.
Mm.
So the freight plan, as I mentioned, it's underway. We'll switch over to a real focus on that for the next probably 6 months or so to wrap that up. We'll build on the relevant rail information and pull in all of the equivalent information for the other modes of transport, and consider not only the modes as individuals, but also the connections between them all, to make sure that we're getting the most out of our freight plan, or out of our freight transportation system. This is just a quick short bullet list of what the federal requirements are for content in this plan. And it's pretty straightforward. I'll call attention to a couple specific items here. Identify needs and issues, how you're going to address those needs and issues through policy strategies and performance measures. Freight intelligent transportation systems is something that's mentioned here specifically. And I will talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but a lot of the getting the most out of our transportation system at this point is really going to be using what we have more effectively and efficiently through information systems, communications and whatnot. So we'll get into that in this plan pretty significantly. We also look at areas of congestion or delay. And as you can imagine, the most significant place in the state where we have truck delay is in the Chittenden County area. I'll show a map here just in a second. And then at the end of this plan, as mentioned very much earlier in this presentation, we do need to put a general investment plan that shows a list of projects and how we're going to use those freight formula funds to address the needs and issues identified in this plan. I'll give you just a couple slides here of information that we've put together for the plan so far to give you a sense of how freight moves in our state. As you can imagine, these two graphics show 2008 freight in terms of weight and value. And as you can imagine, trucks are how we move most of our freight. We even if it's not the entire trip that a good or a piece of freight takes, very often that last mile, or you see that transfer station in Barton there's going to be a truck involved, even if we bring things into the state on the rail line. So it's always going to be a major component, and it's certainly no exception in recent years. So a lot of our planning is oriented around preserving and enhancing the highway system to support that. Rail is a pretty significant component of this as well. And that's where we want to be shifting our heavy, bulky transport items to as much as possible to reduce that impact on the transportation or the highway network. And then the other significant one here to take a peek at is the aviation or air. That's where we're shipping our time-sensitive, low-weight, high-value items, electronics, medicines, etc. You'll see as something that's shipped through the aviation mode. Alluded to this earlier. This is a truck volume map for the state.
Oh, South Burlington.
Yep, exactly. So we are looking at this, and we are working, of course, with the Chittenden County Metropolitan Planning Organization to evaluate all this and incorporate what we can for recommendations to address this into the plan.
We show that to Senator Chittenden, he's going to want so much per truck goes through the county here, so I can see that.
And We are, just a quick mention, we are looking to the future too, in terms of how the system is going to work and where the stresses and impacts will be. And we know that, for instance, the A35 project north of the border on 89 is going to result in growth in traffic on I-89. And we're working with consultants to better understand that, prepare ourselves for those eventual impacts as well. Air freight, like I mentioned, smaller component, but not insignificant. Burlington International, for almost 5 million pounds of freight received in 2019, and 3.5 or so million pounds of freight sent out. We do have freight to a lesser degree at least a couple of other of our airports, Knapp State Airport in Berlin and also in Rutland, Southern Vermont. We're collecting information on that as well to be informed in this plan about what needs might be at the smaller airports. And then we're almost at the end here. Special focus areas in this plan are a few things that you might be familiar with. We're certainly looking at improving the ability for shippers to permit and get things moving through and into and out of our state through online permitting systems upgrades that we're working on with DMV. We'll be looking at how to leverage those intelligent transportation systems and technology for traveler information, so that people know where there are incidents and how to avoid them, and also for permit enforcement opportunities for commercial vehicles. We're certainly looking out into the future in terms of how electrification of the freight fleet will change our needs and issues in the state. And Vermont is one of the signatories to a New England MOU for shifting away from diesel vehicles to clean electric vehicle technology in the coming decades. So we've got some motivation from agreements such as that. We're looking at autonomous vehicles, how that might impact things in the future. As I'm sure you're all aware, we've been working on a permitting process for passenger vehicle testing in Vermont, and the truck aspect of autonomous vehicles is something we're looking out further at, but considering as part of this plan. And then, of course, the rise in e-commerce and the fact that we're taking shipment of a lot more of our everyday household items and doing a lot more shopping online and expecting things to be delivered to our door, considering how that affects our transportation network as well. Next steps, we're going to get into doing some more stakeholder interviews with shippers, businesses in the state, people that are using the freight system in the state to get their perspective on improvements, issues that they've had, and improvements that could be made. We will do a statewide freight forum online in the same manner that we've done town halls for the rail plan. And we will be meeting with a freight plan advisory committee that we've convened for this process. They've met once so far, and we'll use their guidance for the development of the plan in the next few months. And then we hope to have a draft plan by June 30th to put into action as soon as possible. That concludes my presentation. I will point out there are a couple of web pages that we've developed on the VTrans website where there's a whole lot more information. On the rail page, the draft plan, including a very easy to digest 2-page executive summary, is available on there, and as well as all the technical background and information for the planning process. And then there's an equivalent web page for the freight plan development that's linked to the rail plan, but also available on its own through this link that you see on the screen right now. And then my contact information is right there as well if you have any follow-up questions in the future or want more information.
Well, thank you, Dave. Very good presentation. Appreciated the update, so know where we stand on rail. And
yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Good. Costas, anything you want to add to this morning, or?
No, Senator, I think Dave captured the essence of where we're heading with the rail plan. Like he noted, none of this is really new, or most of it is not new. It's been under development for the better part of a decade. Our big goal is getting the train to Burlington, getting it to Montreal,
Yeah.
making sure the bridges are upgraded so our shippers can be provided with cost competitive shipping rates. We view rail not only in terms of mobility, but also in terms of economic development. So railroad jobs are good paying jobs, and they enable local businesses to ship their products nationally and even internationally when we look at our connections to Canada. So we're very excited in terms of where we've been and where we're heading with the rail program, and we view more of the same coming up over the next few years in terms of those improvements.
We've made a lot of progress, a lot of progress. Yeah, thank you for all the hard work to get rail where it is today, and got a bright future, I think. Okay, any other questions from the committee members at this time for anyone about rail? No, thank you very much for giving us that overview. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Liz, are we prepared for the next item 11, or are the
I say break till 11 if that's possible.
okay? We're going to break.